Pittsburgh Steeler fans, it is time once again for another edition of the Know Your Enemy podcast. My name is Michael Beck, your deputy editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and my co-host, as always, Mr. Geoffrey Benedict. Geoffrey, I missed you last week, but how you doing tonight, sir?
Doing very good, Michael. Doing good.
Excellent. Good stuff. Great to hear. And, of course, it's Know Your Enemy. We have a special guest to help us break down the Oakland Raiders, Mr. Matt Holder from Silver and Black Pride. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, but Mike, I gotta correct you. Even though I am a big Oakland Raiders fan, that's the no-no nowadays. It's Las Vegas, man. You got to get with the program here.
I have done this.
The first section to Know Your Enemy. The location.
Okay, we'll work on this. It's in Pittsburgh, so I haven't been.
Yeah.
The amount of times, just to start off the show on a tangent, amount of times I had to re-record, if that makes any sense, of my own solo show because I said Oakland. Even the one I sent in, I said Oakland. I can't get it out of my system. I don't know what it is. I'm good with the LA Chargers. Raiders are.
I still call them San Diego. I still call the Chargers San Diego, and I mean, like I said, I'm from Oakland originally, so I'm sad that they left. So I actually kind of appreciate it too. It's a little more nostalgic.
Okay, so we'll call it a positive. So we'll start off the show on the right foot. But goodness me, Matt, tell us a little bit about this team. What should Steelers fans kind of expect as we kind of get into this matchup?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, one thing that surprised me about Monday night, and I think everyone got to see, is how dominant the pass rush was. I hadn't seen that in the Raiders in a while. I think Austin Gale from PFF tweeted it out. It was like a graphic of something about the highest pressure rate or win rate from Raiders edge defenders in a single game. And it was Yannick Ngakoue from Monday night, Maxx Crosby first Monday night, then Yannick Ngakoue from Monday night, and then a list of Khalil Mack from 2015 and 2016. So to see that was amazing. I mean, that kind of caught me by surprise. I was not expecting that, and I feel like that's something that's going to play a key role. Maybe we touched on a little bit later in the show too, with how banged up and how much turnover the Steelers' offensive line has had, which is kind of similar to the situation with the Ravens. And then offensively, it's Darren Waller's the guy you got to stop, right? I think everybody in the world knows that right now. He's obviously got 19 targets. Nobody else even had 10 after the game. Nobody else had 10 against the Ravens. So he's kind of the key to the offense. He's going to be Derek Carr's go-to guy. He's the guy that Derek trusts the most because everybody else is pretty much like a first or second year player. And then there's Hunter Renfrow in the slot that you don't have to worry about. But yeah, I mean, I think they proved to a lot of people, I'm sure you guys noticed, that they're legit this year. I think they have the chance of making the playoffs. And I think they'll be one of those teams that might be competing with the AFC North in December for one of those wild card spots.
With the game you just had against the Ravens, with that win, what kind of change have you seen in expectations? Is there a big jump in the fan base, or are people kind of, okay, this was a nice win? Add one win to your preseason expectations and let's move on.
Well, you bring up a good point. I mean, it's definitely something off season for Raider fans. That's our glory time, right? For the last 20 years, where we get the hope again, and then only to be disappointed in September through December. But I mean, I think there definitely is beating the Ravens, beating a team that's been a playoff team in the AFC the last 3 years, definitely boosts the confidence. But you kind of bring up a good point of oh yeah, the Raiders, is it a week one win or is it something to kind of build on? The Raiders the last 2 years have started 6-4 and then headed into December with quote unquote the easiest remaining schedule and then choked and not made the playoffs. So there is a little bit of, I think, caution, especially with me personally and within the fan base, I think as a whole, where it's okay, we've seen this starts. We've seen these hot starts. What really is going to matter, and where you guys have lost my trust over the last 2 years, is in that last month of the season. Last year, the Raiders on Monday Night Football in the first game in Vegas beat the Saints and beat them fairly handily. And we all know that's how good that Saints team was last year. So there definitely is some tampered expectations, but I definitely think, a lot of people, as far as building up the hype and talking about Derek Carr getting more familiar with his weapons and, the changes on the defensive side of things. And we saw a lot of more positives on the Raiders for defensively than we have in the last few years. So definitely the optimism is high, but yeah, I think it's definitely tampered a little bit just with how the last few years have gone. And, Raider fans still have PTSD from all the last 20 years. So
Wes Hickok puts $2 in the tip jar. He says, welcome, Matt. Thank you for your time. So thank you for that, Wes. One of the things that I've kind of noticed from the Raiders after Monday night's game is a lot of players ending up on that injury list. It seems like pretty noticeable. Like normally there's injuries after a game, but the amount of players has been kind of outstanding. Gerald McCoy is one. I believe he's done for the year. Unique Ngakoue isn't believed to play against the Steelers this weekend. Starting guard, I'm blanking on the name. Sounds like an ACL.
Denzel Good, yeah.
What's going on with that? How is this team going to survive these injuries?
Well, I mean, they released the injury report, and it was like, I don't even think it fit on one screenshot, right? It was so long I saw it on Twitter. But, I mean, yeah, the Raiders are banged up, and they're banged up with a lot of veteran players. You talk about Denzel Good. That's a huge loss for the Raiders. He was a guy that was, going to be a starter for them all year at guard, was one of the guys that they were kind of counting on to rely on to replace, the few guys that they let go, especially in Gabe Jackson. And he was their backup offensive tackle. So if, Alex Leatherwood or Colton Miller go down, the Raiders are kind of in some hot water and whatnot. And obviously, now they're going to end up starting with an offensive line where it looks like with Richie Incognito out too against the Steelers where Colton Miller is the most senior guy and he's in year 4. So they're super young up front. I mean, that's, I think, where the biggest injuries are going to happen. With Yannick Ngakoue, he did practice today. He was limited today. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with there. I don't think we've gotten a whole lot of info at this time. I hope he can play, but if he doesn't, he's definitely an impact. He's definitely a blow. Like I said, he had a really good game against the Ravens, but he also only played in the first half. He got injured pretty early on, I believe, in the second half. And Carl Nassib stepped in and had a really good game too. He ended up getting that strip sack on Lamar Jackson to help win the game, and he was getting pressure. And I'm admittedly, for whatever fault it might be, I'm a big PFF guy. I work with them on the side too, so I buy into their grade system. I know the Steelers fans, it's not the biggest thing with the old Bud Dupree dilemma, but he graded out really well for them. So, I mean, he's a guy that I think can kind of fill in. Obviously, isn't the same as Yannick, but the Raiders are definitely banged up. Even Josh Jacobs today too. He was on the injury report, and they're already down Jalen Richard, who's supposed to be their third back too. So, with two offensive linemen on the injury report, both looking like they're not going to play with Richie Incognito and Good. It's tough right now for sure.
With those injuries and dealing with a Steelers fan base that is absolutely just on the edge of their seats, waiting to say that the Ravens are trash and are a terrible team. What would you say to Steelers fans to convince them that the Raiders are a legit threat? Because we're seeing a lot of people predicting the Steelers just come out and blow out the Raiders here. Tell us why the Raiders are legit, and this isn't just our dream scenario that the Ravens have somehow become a 1-16 team.
Well, I mean, I think for one, I mean, I know it's the rivalry and whatnot, and like you want, especially watching them lose week 1, you want to think the Ravens are falling off the face of the earth. But I really do think the Ravens are a good team. Obviously, they've had some injury issues, the biggest one being Marcus Peters as well. But I mean, I think with the Raiders, the thing that you can't discredit is like what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, the pass rush that just hasn't been there over the last few years. And I think that's really going to boost their defense. And when I look at the Steelers, and when I was talking with Jeff Hartman yesterday, he was even kind of saying it too. The Steelers, they're very young, or be either very young or very banged up also at tackle also, which is kind of a similar situation to what the Ravens were in, right? Alejandro Villanueva, who you guys know well, was moving to the other side and obviously had his tough times when playing right tackle against Maxx Crosby, who basically beat him every single time they went up against each other. And then even Ronnie Stanley was having trouble with Yannick Ngakoue. So I think with that, I think that's the biggest thing is if the Raiders can get after the quarterback, if the Raiders can get after Big Ben, and who's obviously not the most mobile anymore, but obviously it's tough to bring down in his own right. And if they can get pressure with 4, which is what Gus Bradley wants to do, and kind of sit back in coverage, I think they'll be able to help their young secondary out and be able to match the Steelers' offensive weapons. But this is definitely a big matchup for me, or a big matchup concern for me too, because like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, the Raiders have a young offensive line, and they're going to have to block the likes of like guys like Cam Hayward and Tyson Malawalu, which is not exactly an ideal matchup for the Silver and Black.
Tate Boys puts $1.99 into the tip jar. He asked if Kenyon Drake will be involved more. Of course, Josh Jacobs is battling a little bit of injury. I believe his turf toe or foot related, also battling some sickness. And then follow up there was also, is this a Pro Bowl year for Jonathan Abrams?
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw it on, I think it was, NBC Sports Edge. They listed Josh Jacobs as injured with everything. He's got like a shoulder injury too. So he's banged up. And I think someone else tweeted it. I can't remember exactly what the splits were, but basically Kenyon Drake just got pretty much just as many snaps as Jacobs did on Monday night. So I definitely think you're going to see a lot more Kenyon Drake. I think what the Raiders are going to try and do, again, because they're so young up front and so inexperienced and the interior of their offensive line, I think you're going to see the Raiders try and get a guy like Kenyon Drake out of the backfield on some like flare routes and whatnot and try and turn it into like a 3-on-3, 4-on-4 situation, turn that basketball on grass to try and, move the ball that way and use the screen game, the wide receiver or the running backs and passing game as an extension of the running game. And then as far as Jonathan Abram making the Pro Bowl, I'll be honest, I've never been a great Jonathan Abram fan. I always like to tell the story when I was doing my draft prep and whatnot, because I'm a big draft nut. I put on my note sheet, I don't know if I would draft this guy at all, let alone in the first round. And what do you know? The Raiders take him in the first round. So I just let you know how how connected I am to the organization. But yeah, I mean, Jonathan Abram played really well last night, or played pretty well on Monday night. I thought there were a few moments in the first half where he had the typical mental lapses that have kind of cost him last year. But he ended up playing a pretty clean game the rest of the way out. Had a big pass breakup on Mark Andrews. So I think he's trending in the right direction. Pro Bowler, I got to pump the brakes on that one a little bit. He was one of the worst safeties in the league last year, but I mean, he's definitely trending up. They talked a lot about how they kind of wanted to tone him down a little bit. Anybody who watched Hard Knocks knows he's kind of like that big personality, likes to talk, likes to kind of mix it up. And I think that was part of one of his problems. He was just over aggressive, and the reports are from camp that he's at a much more mellow tone and whatnot. And it showed at least on Monday that he was a little bit more under control and still playing with that fire as much, but turned down a notch so that he can still be able to execute his assignments. So
a little bit earlier, you mentioned Alejandro Villanueva, and I know Steelers fans will pretty quickly tell you that he has been awful for probably about a couple years now. And then flipping over to his offside, he was absolutely embarrassed by Maxx Crosby, of course.
Yes.
Who went on to be named the AFC Defensive Player of the Week. Can you tell us a little bit more about Crosby? Is he a guy that we always should have thought of as a kind of premier pass rusher, or is he kind of just bursting onto the scene right now?
Yeah, I mean, Maxx Crosby was a guy, going back to that same draft class with Jonathan Abram, he was a guy that when the Raiders drafted him, I was excited about him. I saw a guy out of Eastern Michigan who was at a small school, obviously, but was an athletic dude, an athletic freak, had a great get off. And that's, I think, what we really saw last night or Monday night was him just beating Alejandro Villanueva off the ball and then being able to turn speed into power, which is something that he hasn't, necessarily shown as much as a counter move. And that's where he kind of took that next step and where I think everyone started to take notice. But I mean, his rookie year, he had I think he had double-digit sack. He actually out-sacked Nick Bosa, but Nick Bosa had like double the amount of pressures and whatnot. So Nick Bosa definitely still deserved that Rookie of the Year. But I mean, Crosby was one of the finalists. He was one of the finalists 3 for Defensive Rookie of the Year as a rookie. Last year, he had kind of like, I wouldn't say necessarily a setback, but it was just kind of like a not as impressive year. I think he still had decent sack numbers, but he didn't really grow quite as much as you would have liked. And then, I mean, Monday night, I knew he was going to get better. I, had faith in the guy. I knew he was probably going to be one of the Raiders' best defensive linemen, but I didn't even see that coming. And I've been a fan of his since the Raiders drafted him, and that was just impressive. And I mean, they talked about it on the broadcast. He's got an awesome story about his sobriety and battling with that, battling some personal demons. And also on the broadcast, they talked about him putting the work in the film room and doing that stuff and taking more of a leadership role. He was named captain for the first time in his career. So I think, he's just kind of an awesome story that I think will be kind of a guy similar to what you're seeing with Darren Waller from the Raiders that comes to that face of the franchise, right? Kind of guy that ends up being a bigger name. And I think he'll have a really big year. I think he's in line. If we're talking about, potential first-time Pro Bowlers, I think that's the guy that you're looking at from the Raiders.
If Yannick Ngakoue can't go against the Steelers or is like seriously limited in what he's able to do, is there enough other players on the Raiders to provide pressure to keep, the Steelers from focusing on Crosby? Or is Crosby the kind of guy who can he doesn't need that help. He can flat out dominate and change a game by himself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say he can flat out dominate and change the game by himself just because, I do feel like I said, Yannick didn't really play in the second half and Crosby still did fine. It was like you didn't even notice that Yannick wasn't there. But then again, I'm not going to put too much weight into one game against like you said, against a guy that's not been at his best the last few years and was playing a different position. So I definitely think they're going to need somebody else to step up. I think, like I was talking about before, I think Naji can. But then again, I also remember the last year where he really struggled to get pressure. And it's, again, Ronnie Stanley didn't look like himself. So I don't know if I can really trust it. After that, Cleveland Farrell, he was a guy that I honestly thought was going to play a huge role in the Ravens game, and he ended up being a scratch. Gruden said something about him injuring his back, so I don't know if that's – and I believe he was on the injury report today, so I don't know if that's still going to get in the way of him being able to play. He's never really been that great of a pass rusher. I think he can be a decent complementary pass rusher to Maxx Crosby because he can kind of win with some power, but he'll never kind of be that guy that can really – that I would feel confident saying like, oh yeah, he can definitely take pressure off Crosby. I think their best option is going to be Nassib, and he can be up or down. And then the last guy on the roster, or the last edge rusher on the roster, would be Malcolm Kuntz, who was just was a third round pick he's a third round rookie this year, and I don't think he even played, but had his moments in the preseason. But he's from Buffalo, so still kind of playing in the Maxx, still kind of getting adjusted to that NFL speed. Don't think he's quite ready yet.
So this is another super chat from Connor Eddie, who puts $1.99 in the tip jar. I think this is a more Steelers related question, so I'll pose this to you, Geoffrey. How long can the defense continue to carry the Steelers offense?
Well, they did it one full game. During the game against Buffalo, I said defense is playing great. It's not going to hold up. Like, the offense is going to have to deliver. Buffalo's offense is too good. Steelers showed me wrong on that. I think they can hold up. It depends on matchups, man. And I think there is a chance they can do it, but you've got to be playing at a really high level. And once teams get an idea, once teams figure out, how we're moving around Minkah in the slot, that really threw Josh Allen off because no one's seen that. Like we haven't done that since Game 3 of 2019 when he was his first game here. So I think once teams start to figure out the little tricks we pulled to kind of throw Josh Allen off his game, it's gonna have less impact. So I really don't think the defense can carry the offense that long. The offense has to get together. They have to figure out what they're doing and score some points.
Okay, Matt, we talked about the Raiders star pass rusher. Now, to flip things over, talk about TJ Watt. Who is going to be the guy that is challenged with slowing him down? And is this a game where TJ could go off, or are the right pieces in place to slow down the $112 million man?
I think TJ Watt has a very good chance of looking like a $112 man on Sunday. I mean, the Raiders have, like I said, Alex Leatherwood at right tackle. Alex Leatherwood, his problem coming out of Bama, and the reason why a lot of people thought he might be a better guard was because he's not good in pass protection. On Monday night, we saw that. He gave up 2 sacks. There was one that I just killed me, being a guy that loves the pass rush, the trenches war, where he had his first 2 steps, he was perfect, and then for some godforsaken reason, he just stops his feet, and then tries to lunge at Justin Houston, which is the last guy on that field that you want to do that against, and then gives up a terrible sack on 3rd down. I am definitely scared of what TJ Watt can do to Alex Leatherwood, just because of, that's TJ Watt's strength. He's one of the best in the NFL about doing that. There's a reason why the Steelers made him the highest paid defender in the NFL. And, he has a great opportunity to feast on a young rookie. I think you're going to see a lot of chip blocks. You're going to see a lot of max protection. I think you're going to see a lot of quick game from the Raiders. I think they're going to try and dink and dunk their way down the field. And for a lot of that reason, and a lot of the reasons I was talking about at the beginning, the interior rush has a chance too. But yeah, I mean, I think I would expect the Raiders to kind of use a lot of play action, probably move the pocket, roll left, kind of go away from TJ Watt. When they played Khalil Mack a few years ago, that's kind of was what they're doing, is basically saying, you guys might beat us, but we're not going to let Khalil Mack beat us. We're going to put 2 guys on him basically every play, sometimes 3. Sometimes he's going to get a chip and the back's going to come help. And I think that's going to be a big part of Gruden's game plan. So if you guys want, if you guys, any film buffs out there want to go back and you can get your hands on it, go try and watch the Raiders Bears game in London from, 2019, where they played Khalil Mack. I think you'll see a similar game plan. Obviously 2 guys with different skill sets, but can, create the same amount of havoc in the offense's backfield. So I think it'll be similar game plan for the Raiders.
All right, we covered TJ Watt's side. Obviously, the Raiders are a little familiar with Melvin Ingram.
Right.
You ran into him a few times. I don't know if you got the chance to watch him. He looked really good against Buffalo. Who do the Raiders have on the other side? And if they're focusing on TJ Watt, is Melvin Ingram going to be set up to be a real problem in this game?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the matchups I'm really excited about to watch this week. And that's going to be Colton Miller versus Melvin Ingram or Alex Highsmith, whoever's out there. And I mean, Colton Miller was the lone bright spot in the Raiders' offensive line, and he's been a guy that's been on the rise for the last few years. His rookie year was really rough. His rookie year, he was one of the worst tackles, gave up the most sacks, and he has grown tremendously. He did really well on Monday night. Again, was of the 4 Raiders offensive linemen, he was the one guy that actually held their own. So I think Melvin Ingram and him, because of what I was saying about how much help they're going to need to stop TJ Watt on the right side, I think Melvin Ingram and Colton Miller are going to have a lot of one-on-ones, and I think the Raiders are going to basically have to tell Colton Miller, look, we need you to win this. We need you to be the guy, and we need you to hold up against these 2 pass rushers, Highsmith or Ingram, because we can't give you any help. We got to give all our help to the other side. So, yeah, that might be one of the key matchups in the game, and so I'm excited to see what happens. I think I'll be a homer and I'll say Colton Miller can hold his own, but obviously they're 2 guys that have squared off against each other in the past, having played the Chargers in the division twice a year, every year of Colton Miller's career. So it'll be fun. I'm excited to see that because I think it'll be a big barometer to see how much Colton Miller has really grown, especially since he has a history going up against that guy.
So kicking things out just outside the tackle box and looking at Darren Waller, the superstar tight end of the Las Vegas Raiders. Is it possible to slow this guy down? He is on an 8-game tear, which is absolutely ridiculous. Basically 100 yards each and every one of the last 8 games, aside for 1 game, multiple touchdowns, basically in all of them as well. He has been one of the best players in the NFL over this stretch. Is it possible to slow this guy down? Is this one where it's just okay, we got to just attempt to contain him, or is this someone that he's just going to feast no matter what?
I mean, the best way to do it is to kind of bracket coverage. That's what I think they were pointing out on the broadcast, what they were doing with the Ravens. And when they started, shifting the focus to Hunter Renfrow a little bit more in the passing game is, when Waller kind of had that safety overhanging on the top of him and kind of zone him up a little bit so that he doesn't have the same guy on him, right? So he can't just get in the mode of, all right, I'm going to beat this guy. I'm bigger than this guy, so I'll just beat him with my body. And right, I'll use my 6'7" frame, my 6'7", 260 frame. Or if I'm going up against a linebacker, I'll use my 4.5 speed to go beat this guy. That's why he's such a matchup problem, and he can run routes like a next receiver. So that's really makes him, almost a cheat code. The Raiders version of a cheat code. Plus, the Raiders are going to target the hell out of him. Like I said, he had 19 last game. Nobody else had 10. So that kind of, in a sense, what you're talking about with the stats and whatnot. I think that gets inflated a little bit with how weak the Raiders receiving core was, especially last year and kind of is this year. He's going to get the lion's share of those catches and whatnot to make him look probably a little bit more unguardable than he really is. But then again, he's also making catches in double coverage too, and he can beat you that way too. But yeah, the biggest thing is you can't leave it up to one guy, and unless that guy is an absolute superstar. But I mean, I haven't seen anybody do it yet. You got to kind of hang that safety over the top, which obviously is going to open up somebody else, and it's just a matter of if the Raiders can have a receiver step up and beat some one-on-one coverage, because that's the biggest thing is you can't leave that guy alone on an island.
To support Waller, would you in this game rather see the Raiders establish a good run game, or like you said, the other receivers have been struggling, see one or two of them really step up and take some of the pressure off of Darren Waller?
I think definitely the receivers. I think, I've been kind of clamoring all offseason and even was kind of getting frustrated on Monday night. Bryan Edwards and Henry Ruggs, they ended up stepping up and playing key roles in the comeback win, but neither one of them had a catch till 5 minutes left in the game. That's not a formula the Raiders can win with consistently, right? You got to get somebody else the ball. Like I said, you can't feed Darren Waller 20 targets a game and expect, good things to happen every single time. And so I think that's the thing for me, especially this early on in the season. We kind of know what Josh Jacobs is. We know he's a good running back, plus he's banged up. So I'd almost rather see them, try, like I said, trying to attack the perimeters and maybe use Kenyon Drake a little bit more and try and get guys in space rather than, trying to use 4 young offensive linemen to push around a really good defensive line in the running game. And yeah, I mean, like I said, the biggest thing would be is if I can see one of those guys, one of those receivers, preferably Henry Ruggs or Bryan Edwards, kind of step up and emerge as, the number one receiver. Darren Waller is the number one receiver, but the best wide receiver, the kind of the number 2 option in the passing game, that'd be huge. And I mean, a guy like a Hunter Renfrow has been able to step up and, has had his moments and is able to take some of the pressure. But he's just still kind of proven to be, if you have a physical defender or a physical corner that can come up and jam him on the line of scrimmage, he'll do well with that. That's what the Ravens did with Marlon Humphrey when Renfro started getting his yards. They put Marlon Humphrey on him, and then he couldn't, kind of just went quiet. But that opened things up for Waller and whatnot. So that's kind of the thing that I'm definitely looking forward to early on in the season, is seeing who's going to step up as that first and best receiver out of the actual wide receivers.
So breaking this game down specifically, what will the Raiders have to do on Sunday to have won this game? What exactly are the 2-3 things you think they have to check off to win this game?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is they have to keep Derek Carr clean. They have to keep him healthy, whether that's the offensive line just suddenly having a miraculous recovery and, doing a 180 from what we saw on Monday, because Carr got sacked, I believe, 3 times and was under pressure quite a bit, or, them being able to just dink and dunk their way down the field. I think that's the biggest thing. Again, like I just don't trust them to be able to run the ball on the Steelers front seven, especially being so down. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then defensively, it's just going to be, like I was talking about, the pass rush. The pass rush is going to be key all year. They're very young in the secondary outside of Casey Hayward. You got Trayvon Mullen, who's a third-year corner. And then you have Jonathan Abram, who, like I said, missed his rookie season. And then is also in his third year, but obviously, missed 1 year and then really playing on his second. And then Trevon Merrick and then Nate Hobbs in the slot, which are 2 rookies. So I think that's the biggest thing, is if they can get to the Big Ben, if they can get some pass rush with 4, and they can and then they can move the ball through the air and make the Steelers play basketball on grass, I think that's how the Raiders are going to win this game.
Where would you rate Derek Carr among NFL quarterbacks? Because I know one of the big things is he is phenomenal with the game-winning drives. I believe he's like for people in their 8th season or before, he's like tied for 3rd for the most behind, like, I think it's like Matt Stafford and Matt Ryan. Where would you rank him? How important is that, and where overall do you think he lands in the NFL hierarchy?
You just asked like the landmine question on Raiders Twitter, right? Like whatever answer, you're just trying to get me in trouble here, Geoff. You're killing me over here. But no, I think he's I feel like the conversation with him is he's probably near the top 12, maybe 11 to like 14 range, kind of in there, factoring in age and, development and print and whatnot and potential with guys. Cause I mean, he's in year 8, right? Like he's not going to get much better. He kind of is who he is at this point. Like I'm not going to expect him to make a lot of jumps. And I mean, like you said about the fourth quarter comebacks, well, the problem is, and I felt like Monday night was kind of a perfect example of kind of who Derek Carr is as a quarterback. Start the game, like, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but he just looked like jittery and he was missing his throws. He was throwing behind guys and he was throwing off target. And then, he kind of went on a streak in the middle of the game where it's like, all right, he's got back in a rhythm and he's like getting the completions. I think they announced that they're like, he's completed like 7 passes in a row or whatever. And then he goes later and it's like, okay, Derek Carr is now throwing incompletions on 5 out of 7. It's like, it's just this tidal wave of like up and down performances. And that's, I think, makes him hard to evaluate. And that's kind of where I go in. He's in the above average to good category. I can't put him in the very good to great category or the elite category just yet. But I think he's good. I think he's a guy that you can do better than, but you can do a hell of a lot worse with. And I think that's why the Raiders have kept on to him. They've always, in the last few years, they've been picking in the middle of the rounds where you're not going to be able to draft a great quarterback. They're rumored to be in the Brady conversation, but he wanted to stay on the East Coast. I honestly do think if Tom Brady wanted to be a Raider, he would have been a Raider. But obviously that didn't work out. So they've kind of been in this situation where they're like, yeah, we like this guy. He can do what he wants. He can do a lot of what we ask him, but we can also do better, and we're always going to look to upgrade it. And that's kind of what the mantra they've said over the year. We're really happy with Derek Carr, but we're looking to upgrade every single position. And that's kind of the same philosophy I have. I mean, again, I think he can be good enough to lead this team to the playoffs. When the situation is really good around him, he's been really good. That's what we saw in 2016 when he was an MVP candidate. He had one of the best offensive lines in Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree going for 1,000 yards on the outside. So I like him. I think he can be a good quarterback, but it's definitely, a situation where if they had an opportunity to trade up in the draft, or they had an opportunity to maybe get an Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, if he still wants to play and wants to leave Green Bay, I definitely explore it. But I think Derek Carr gets a lot of hate too. That's not exactly deserved on his part. I think he's a better quarterback than a lot of people realize.
Before we get you out of here, I got a couple more quick questions for you. First and foremost, do you think there's going to be any more kind of added pressure to this team to try to get that revenge win for Mike Mayock after that Antonio Brown trade?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's a good question. I mean, I don't think Mike Mayock's beef is with the Steelers, right? I mean, the beef is with AB himself. Like, I mean, AB is the one who tried to take a swing on him and call him a racial slur. So I don't know if there's that much of that trade. I think the one that Gruden wants to get back is the Martavis Bryant trade. What was that? That was also a third rounder, and I can't remember. Did the third rounder that you got from Martavis, was that the one you guys took Deontay Johnson with, or was it the one from AB?
AB was Deontay Johnson.
AB was Deontay Johnson, but yeah, I mean, either way, like the Raiders gave the Steelers a third round pick in back-to-back years for a receiver that never scored a touchdown for him.
Mason Rudolph.
Mason Rudolph.
That was the Martavis Bryant pick.
Then we made up for it. Then we're good. We're good. We're good on that one. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if there's any ill will towards the Steelers, but yeah, I think when they played the Bucks, I definitely think, and AB was on the Bucks, I definitely think Mayock probably wanted to win that game. Unfortunately, it didn't go the Raiders' way. So,
Geoffrey, did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
I'm good, man.
All right. Final question for you, Matt. Who is going to win on Sunday, and what's the final score?
Oh man, Geoff asked me the same question in the 5 question stuff. So I got to be a homer, riding off the high win. I'm going to say the Raiders. I think it'll be an old-fashioned Raiders-Steelers game, nice slugfest, low scoring. I think both defenses show up, so I think it'll be 20-16 Raiders. But I got to be the villain on here, right?
Who knows? Maybe there'll be some crazy play as time expires during regulation. Yeah. Stranger things have happened, am I right?
Stranger things, yeah. I like weird scores. I'm a scoregami guy, so I want to see a weird score. That's always
love scoregami.
Let's go.
Matt, thank you so much for your time.
No, thanks you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. So everyone that is watching on YouTube and Facebook, just hang tight. We will flip over to the second half of our show in just a moment. If you're listening on the podcast platform side, you'll have to physically click over to the second half of the show. We'll get more into the Steelers perspective when we get there. So, Matt, you're free to go. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, man.
Good one.
All righty, Pittsburgh Steeler fans. It is time for the second half of Know Your Enemy. Once again, my name is Michael Beck, joined by a chuckling Geoffrey Benedict. What is going on? Did I say my name wrong? What happened this time? What did I do?
No, all righty. It's almost like
I am Canadian.
I am righty.
I am wearing
all our friends
maple leaf today. I am that Canadian. Gosh darn it.
All righty. Yeah, we're gonna have to get Keith Butler on this podcast. Guys can go.
All right, let's get to the super chat that we got earlier on the show before I get completely ripped apart. Comes in from Sean Manahan. He put $5 in the tip jar. He asked if there's any chance this season we will put an inverted cover 2 that we saw from Super Bowl 43, but with Minkah Fitzpatrick playing the corner spot and a corner playing back at safety. Geoffrey, what do you think?
Yeah, with Sutton? There's a chance there. Like, I hadn't thought about that. That's actually an interesting one. I could totally see Minkah up at corner. He's played it. He can do cornerback. It's not like Terrell Edmonds where you're like, oh, you can cover, but you're going to have to do something different all of a sudden. And, yeah, I can see it. I can see them putting Sutton back and Minkah up. There is definitely a possibility of that.
Okay. So to kind of get back on our scheduled programming is – oh my gosh. I can't say anything without either making an idiot of myself or just Geoffrey chuckling no matter what. I don't know. It's just a vicious cycle here at BTSC. But Geoffrey, what are your overall thoughts of this Sunday's game coming up? Are you excited from the Steelers' perspective? First time in Heinz Field with fans in the stands. That environment's going to be juiced up, coming off a huge win. Honestly, I'm really excited to watch the Steelers play this one. I think they're going to be firing all cylinders as opposed to what they did in Buffalo, where it's kind of hang on, just hold on to the rope until the end and try to sneak one out, which is exactly what they did. I think we're seeing a complete opposite Steelers team this weekend. What are your thoughts?
I think I have to agree with our guest. I think we're going to see a low-scoring game. These two teams combined in week 1 through 3 quarters combined, the Steelers and Oakland Raiders scored 16 points in 3 quarters of football. Obviously, the Steelers had a special teams touchdown, and the Raiders and Ravens just went off scoring, trading scores back and forth in the fourth quarter and in overtime. But I think we're going to see a lower scoring game, which I like because the Steelers need to get the run game right. They need to get it going. They need to work the ball around, and having that a nice low scoring game gives you some leeway. Kick some Chris Boswell field goals. Keep the game going. Get your run game going. Get Naji Harris involved. I said he was chiding you, and I'm sitting there thinking I'm going to try and avoid saying the team name so I don't say Oakland.
That's why I've been just
saying
Raiders.
The Oakland Raiders. They're the Oakland. I don't care where they are. They're still the Oakland Raiders.
Even when they're in LA.
The Oakland Raiders are now playing in Las Vegas. That's the truth, people. Oh gosh. But yeah, I think we're going to see a low-scoring game, and I really like that.
Okay, interesting. I am kind of under the assumption that the Steelers might have a hot start. Honestly, it will sound super homer, but I feel like the Steelers are going to get the jump on this team from the get-go. And just kind of one of those games where the environment's right. The Raiders are coming off this super emotional, up and down, crazy overtime victory on a Monday night. They're very banged up and injured. I think there's a lot of factors pointing in the Steelers' direction. First and foremost is how healthy the Steelers are. Like Coach Tomlin even said at his press conference today, yeah, from a health perspective, we're good. And then the Raiders, on the other hand, everyone's hurt on that team, and they just went through the ringer emotionally. Do you think that could be a factor at all, that they played this insane game Monday night, 5 quarters long, pretty much going the distance in overtime? One less day to prepare. Do you think those factors could sway the result on Sunday at all, or is that just all kind of just semantics?
I think the one fewer day is an impact, and I do think an overtime game like that where it was a crazy game and there was a lot of hitting. Those guys were really going at each other. That could very well have an impact. Man, think of that overtime game. I cannot get over. I'm sorry. I'm just completely out of the blue, just jumping off the rails here. But did you see the game-winning touchdown?
Of course I did. Watching the Ravens lose.
David Carr just
tune in for that.
Derek Carr, not David. See, I'm gonna be bad. It's gonna get bad here. Derek Carr just he took 3 steps back and just threw a prayer.
Oh,
he just chucked it.
Back foot. It was ugly.
And Marlon Humphrey's just I got beat. I'll stop running.
Yeah.
I was holy crap. And then that's it. That's the game. That was the game. It was bizarre. Also, I kept hearing it was a really great game. So I watched the whole thing today just to prep for the show.
It's a great
and it was a terrible game.
It was a great last 5 minutes.
Terrible game. And then it was the whole game, the offenses can't figure out, the defenses are dominating. And then the last 5 minutes, the defenses are all right, we're done. We're just gonna, we're here to just get our paycheck now. We don't care. And the offenses go off. And I don't know. I didn't like it. It was a crappy game to me.
So this is a really good super chat here. From Monster19. Hopefully I got that right. He puts $1.99, or she puts $1.99 in the tip jar. Asks, any chance Naji runs for 75 plus yards? Of course, I think he only hit 48 yards or 45 against the Bills. What do you think, Geoffrey? Could they kind of start getting things in motion for Naji Harris to have a better game?
No. I don't see it. I really don't. This team right now, as it is, no. I think they need to work on the run game. Maybe if it's low scoring and he can break one, he can hit something. What I really want to see, and this is what really killed the Steelers against Buffalo, how many times did Ben Roethlisberger have Naji Harris open in the flats and just flat out miss him?
I think it was 3 complete whiffs.
And that's where he made his yards in the preseason. That's where he's going to be deadly, is when he slips out there. And now he doesn't have to worry about the fact that our offensive line doesn't know what they're doing. Now he doesn't have to worry about the defensive line. He can outrun the linebackers. He can truck a cornerback. He can juke people. You get that man in the open field, he's going to collect some ankles. He's going to take some bodies, and he is going to get some yards. And Ben's just like, hey, Naji, are you 78 feet tall? No? Are you like, can you Chase Claypool this? If not, I mean, wide open, 6 yards from Ben Roethlisberger, no one in between him, and Ben's just like, I'm throwing it way over your head. And you see Naji like jumping with one hand, just tipping the ball, trying to tip it to himself so he's a chance to do something. That's terrible. If they get that sorted out, Naji Harris could have a big game, but I don't see 75 rushing yards yet. Not with the way this offensive line is playing.
I kind of have a prediction for this game, and tell me if I'm crazy. But well, you probably will. But
crazy.
Oh, there you go. So Ben Roethlisberger is 3 touchdown passes away from 400 on his career. He'd be the 8th person to do so in NFL history. We all know, watching these Steeler games, when someone's close to a record, Coach Tomlin kind of likes to push the envelope so they can do it. This is the first time the Steelers are playing at home in front of a full house since, 2019. Do you think the Steelers try to push this a little bit more game plan-wise, where Ben Roethlisberger is kind of the feature in this game, to try to have this kind of nice story in front of the fans where he can have these 3 touchdown passes, get to 400, be this nice little story? In the back of my mind, I feel like that's how it kind of plays out. Am I crazy aside from the usual reasons, or is this something that is definitely a possibility?
Oh, I'm going to go with you being crazy, Michael. The way Ben played in week 1,
not great.
I know you like the storyline, but look at the quarterback play we had in week 1 and tell me you're going to be like, you know what we should do in week 2 is just have Ben throw it all the time. That's not how you want to go this. If he's starting off and he's a little rough still, you're talking we're down points off defensive turnover. You're talking, we don't want that. We don't want that. So I think you're going to see, again, Matt Canada do a lot of motion. You're going to see a lot of runs. You're going to see a lot of the same setup you saw in Buffalo, because that's what they really need to get going for this offense to thrive. It's way too early in the season, and this isn't the game to start abandoning, the formula and just say, well, Ben, hopefully you have it. Hopefully we can just win with you throwing it.
So do you think Ben Roethlisberger is completely washed? Are these what people were saying were true, or are we going to be kind of wishing that he wasn't the guy this year, but by year's end? What's the vibe right now?
I don't think that at all. I think we saw Ben start to settle down. I honestly think fans, stadium, the whole atmosphere. Ben's always been a very, roller coastery type of quarterback. He's always been a guy who's in the moment. When he travels far and is in front of a hostile crowd, he doesn't play as well. All that kind of stuff. I think you saw, to me, especially the fact that he was overthrowing everything early, and he was just strong. He was pushing balls too far. If he's leading someone, it was always leading him too far. I think you're seeing a little bit of adrenaline there. I think you're seeing a little bit too much excitement. So I think he will settle it down. I think he'll be fine. But I also think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get going, for him to hit midseason form. And personally, part of it is I'm hoping that's the case. This team needs Ben Roethlisberger to be in midseason form late in the season, because he's not gonna. He's in my opinion, he's old enough. He's not going to be a guy that can carry a team for 17 games. He's not going to be that guy. The longer we can go and just kind of ease him in and get him going, that's fine by me. We want these guys for the playoffs. Ben, Naji, we want them rolling. The offensive line, we want them gelled and going. We want Claypool going off. We want all that end of the season into the playoffs. And what we saw in Buffalo was heartening, because you saw a team win when we didn't have that. And if we can pull off enough wins to just make it to the playoffs and have those guys going, that'd be the best.
Oh, that would be beautiful. We have spent a little bit of time on the offensive side of the ball, but we really should talk about this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, because holy smokes, that was an unbelievable performance against the Buffalo Bills. From kickoff to final whistle, that was dominance straight up against one of the best offenses in the NFL. That was a beautiful performance. Before we get into this game itself, when speaking about this defense, talent-wise, have they proved to you that this could be as talented a defense as one that we saw, say, going back to 2008?
I wouldn't put them on that level. I would not put them on that level. They've got some guys. They've got the Cam Hayward. They've got the TJ Watt. Melvin Ingram looks like a fine. Highsmith, he's going to get his, but the first game he wasn't great. He drew a holding penalty. He had some good plays. Don't get me wrong, but he's not that level. He's not going yet. He hasn't had that game yet. I don't think 2008. You give me like a 2007 defense, 2006, where they were kind of coming together. Lamar Woodley before he became dominant. I think you have something there when you have was it 2006 right after the Super Bowl when it was 2007 when Woodley was a rookie. I think we can pull that kind of defense off. I don't think we're quite 2008 level yet.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, no, that's totally fair. It's also different eras, but what were your overall thoughts of that game? Was that as impressive as I saw it to be? Because that was one excellent game from that group.
I was really worried about that game because the Bills do so many wide receivers. They play so many wide receivers, and they went wide receiver crazy in that game. Like they averaged 3.5 wide receivers per snap. It's insane. Like they didn't even average. They averaged like a third of a tight end every 2/3, 2 out of every 3 snaps. They had a tight end on the field. Like they didn't even play their good tight ends. Running backs barely got to play. Like they just went wide receivers at us, threw it out there because that's their offense. But also, I think they went farther because you look at our roster. You're saying, where are the question marks? Well, yeah, defensive back. That was our number one question mark heading into this game. They spread us out. We were going 5-6 defensive backs a play. Very rarely did we even get 3 defensive linemen on the field. And they answered the call. And really with some creativity. The way they protected Trey Norwood, who had a really fine game and a phenomenal game if you're counting the fact that it was his first game and he's a 7th round pick rookie, right? No one thought this guy was NFL ready going into the draft. Nobody. If they thought he was ready to be a nickel corner on NFL defense, he would have been gone in the 4th round. He lasted to the 7th. Nobody thought this guy was going to do this good. But the way they had him in, then they had Millette come in for a while. They were switching Minkah Fitzpatrick and him, not just moving Minkah around to make more dangerous situations and answer, fill holes and answer problems, but moving Trey Norwood around so that no one really got a chance to see his flaws and be able to exploit them in whatever position he was playing. Like you didn't have long enough. So that was really great how they survived that. And that gives you a lot of hope for the defensive backs. This game coming up is going to test the Steelers in a very different direction, though. Very different.
Now, before we get into this game specifically, I want to ask about Cam Sutton because he made that incredible play on that 4th down stop, that 4th and 1, that tackle, that recognition, A1. That is as good as he's going to get. That is a 100 out of 100 football IQ play. On that flea flicker, he stuck to Stephon Diggs and knocked the ball out of the air. And it's a play no one's talking about, but Cam Sutton made that play. He made plays all game long, and he was the guy that they were targeting. Sure, they scored that touchdown on him, but that was literally a perfect pass. An inch to the left, inch to the right, that was incomplete. Cam Sutton was all over Gabe Davis, I believe it was. Is Cam Sutton that guy? Is he a dude for us? Did the Steelers find something in Cam Sutton? Is this the reason why they let Steven Nelson walk?
Okay, in the passing game, we saw what I expected from Cam Sutton. He gave up receptions, tackled the catch. He got beat by a great throw when the cut by the receiver got him turned around. And if you're facing away from the quarterback, you're covering the width of your shoulders. That's the old saying. He was trying to watch the guy's eyes. The guy did some late hands. Great throw, great work by the receiver in that situation. Seeing how Cam Sutton had gotten himself turned around, Sutton did a good job recovering. His recovery was really good. He made that throw very difficult. He consistently made it hard on the offense. And that's really, in the modern NFL, where there is no such thing as a lockdown corner. There really isn't. The rules have taken that completely out of the game. You can't just shut somebody down one-on-one. The NFL rules won't let you. Cam Sutton is a very good cornerback. When you talk about that 4th and 1 stop, and furthermore, if you watched in the first quarter, when they were up, when they had that first kickoff, he had a tackle on Stephon Diggs where they had Diggs on Trey Norwood and they tried to run a little out route with him, and very, Joe Hayden-esque, he jumps in there and makes a hit as soon as Stephon Diggs gets the ball. Stephon Diggs is down. Trey Norwood's chasing Stephon Diggs. Cam Sutton makes the tackle. Those were the first 2 legit tackles for a loss I've seen in his career. Right? In 2020, he had a sack where the quarterback escaped the pocket and was running for his life. And when he ran out of bounds 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage, Cameron Sutton was the closest player to him. That was his sack. He had a tackle for a loss where a guy fell down and Cameron Sutton walked up and touched him on the shoulder to down it. Like that was his tackle for a loss. This is not Cam Sutton's game. And he really added that, really developed that this season. So yeah, Cam Sutton, phenomenal what I saw there. A lot of growth from him, and I think he's going to be a very solid starting cornerback. I think as the season goes on, we're going to see he's a Steven Nelson, right? Don't put him higher than that. He's going to be a Steven Nelson, just a cheaper version. And I think, honestly, with what he showed there, he can actually be that. I've been saying if he's 80% of Steven Nelson for 1/3 the cost, that's great. I think he can legit be exactly what Steven Nelson was for the Steelers.
You said that exact phrase to me about 15 times throughout this offseason off air. So, ladies and gentlemen, Geoffrey is sticking to his guns 100%, just so you know. But aside from that, of course, we're talking about the defensive backs, and we talked about Darren Waller in the first half. How the heck are the Steelers going to stop this guy? Can the Steelers be the team that stops this guy from this ridiculous run he's been on? Because like I mentioned, and it should be in an article that's dropping on Thursday morning, Darren Waller is the key to this game. If the Steelers can find a way to stuff him, the Raiders have no hope because, seriously, he has been their offense for the last about 10 games. Can they stop this guy, or is slowing this guy the best case scenario? Slowing being like 75 yards.
I got good news for you. The Steelers are the perfect team to stop this. They are the team to stop this because, first off, you have Terrell Edmunds. Like, Minkah Fitzpatrick was moving around this game, and Terrell Edmunds, the Steelers were dedicated against Buffalo to keeping 2 safeties deep. Dedicated to it, right? That's not going to be the case in Oakland. You're going to see single high safety. You're going to see Minkah Fitzpatrick as that single high safety. You're going to see Terrell Edmunds up when not Oakland, when Las Vegas, the Raiders go,
the Buffalo Raiders,
multiple wide receivers, they spread it out. They do that a lot with running backs and everything. They'll do heavy sets and then go 5 wide. When they do that, you're going to see a Terrell Edmunds on Darren Waller. And you're going to see something that people will probably go crazy about. You're going to see Joe Schobert on Darren Waller with Minkah Fitzpatrick behind him. You're going to see that. You're going to see someone in his zone behind him, Joe Schobert up on him, so that if he does go deep, yeah, he's going to beat Joe Schobert deep. Of course he's going to beat Joe Schobert deep, but you have help. You have that bracket, which is what our guest was talking about, bracket coverage. When the linebackers, you see a linebacker on a glaring mismatch, it's bracket coverage. There's a safety behind them almost every time. So if it goes deep, they're there to take that play. So yeah, I think they can. The Steelers in 2018 were one of the worst teams against tight ends. 2019, 2020, both. They're top 3 in defending tight ends. Expect the Steelers to have a really good game against Darren Waller. I would expect somewhere around about 5 or less yards per target. Either that, or they have to get away from him. If he has over 10 targets, I think you're seeing 5.
Carr loves throwing him the ball, though. He had 19 targets last game. I think Carr just will force it to him.
If you think 19 targets, if he had 80 yards, that's slightly over 4 yards per target. That's a clear win. Like, if he gets 80 yards on 19 targets, the Steelers have to count that as a major victory. If he has one tight end and 80 yards on 19 targets, you're like, yeah, you know what? We won the game because you spent that much of your offense throwing to a guy and you only got 80 yards and a touchdown.
I think this game specifically, the Steelers are also dodging a huge bullet, and we'll get to play a team that was very much like what the Bills were last week, with Josh Jacobs nursing about basically every injury you could at this point in the season because he's beat up. Losing your starting guard for the year, Alex Leatherwood struggling. I just can't foresee Kenyon Drake and John Gruden looking at Kenyon Drake and be like, all right, you're going to be our guy and we're going to give you 30 carries. This game just is not set up for that. If this kind of turns into a shootout style game, is that exactly falling into the Steelers' lap with not shootout style, but Derek Carr having to drop back and throw the ball 50 times? Is that exactly falling into what the Steelers would want to have happen?
Absolutely. Absolutely, that would. And one of the reasons is you look at that week 1 game, the Raiders weren't winning that game. Like, for most of the game, they were trailing.
Oh, yeah.
It was close, but they were trailing. Buffalo was playing like 3.5 receivers per play average on snap. Raiders are slightly above 2. Slightly above 2. They averaged 1.75 tight ends per snap. That means vast majority of the time they had 2 tight ends on the field. If you had like at 1.75 tight ends / fullbacks, right? They had that extra guy most of the time was a tight end or a fullback. They go big, they go strong. The Bills' top 3 leading receivers, the tallest is Stephon Diggs at 6 foot. The Bills, the Raiders have like Darren Waller, who's 6'6". They use Kenyon Drake in the passing game. He's 6'1". They've got a 6'3" receiver. They have a lot more size. They're going to be a lot more deep speed. They're a very different way of attacking your defense. And I think, honestly, it kind of does play into the Steelers. It's just the Steelers have to adapt to a very different offense that they're defending.
So with exactly what you just said, talking about their sizes, could this be the week that Kello Witherspoon gets off that healthy scratch list, of course, being traded for just a few days before the season, being a 6'3" corner? Could he be in the lineup? Could Carl Joseph? I know he was put on the protected practice squad list, so I don't imagine he does play and just continues to be on the practice squad for another week. But could he be a guy the Steelers could be looking at calling up to try to slow down these bigger bodies?
We could see it. I didn't see a Kello Witherspoon, but I don't know how much we're going to be playing nickel. To me, the story of this game is, the story of week 1 and week 2 is week 1 tested our defensive back depth. With Stephon Tuitt out, week 2 is going to test our defensive line depth. You're going to see a lot more 3-4. And the Raiders, if they're smart, they're going to do that. We saw that when Alu was out. We saw teams be like, so who's your 3rd defensive lineman? Who's your 4th? Who's your 5th defensive lineman? If we're constantly putting you in 3-4 and we're running and we're wearing those guys down, who's your depth? Like, Cam Hayward only played 2/3 of snaps. When if you've got Alu and Wormley, or you've got Chris Wormley and you've got Carlos Davis in as your defensive tackles, that's not good, right? That's what the Raiders want, and that's the point where they are going to be able to start dictating the game interior to the interior of our line. So while we could see a Witherspoon play, I don't think it would make that much of a difference because we're probably not going to spend that much time in nickel. We're going to spend a lot more time in the 3-4 defense. So I'm very interested to see if the Steelers call up an extra defensive lineman. Because I think we had 5 last week.
Yeah, Loudermilk was healthy scratched.
Yeah, we had 5 in that game last week. I would not be surprised to see the Steelers carry 7 active defensive linemen. I don't know if they can do a practice squad call-up. I don't know how those work this year. I haven't paid attention to all that. But I would not be surprised 6 or 7. 7 if they can, 6 if they can't. I just expect that because the Raiders, if they're smart, are going to be coming for our interior line.
Right. Now, we are approaching the top of our show here, so I do want to ask, what would your final score prediction be for Sunday's game between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh?
Well, I expect a very low-scoring game with a late touchdown to make it 13-6.
Ooh, very low scoring. See, I'm thinking that crowd juice and like that emotional roller coaster the Raiders have been on, I think it just falls into the Steelers' lap. They usually play really, really good in their home opener. I think the Steelers win this one in a blowout style fashion, 31-10. Honestly, I think this is falling perfectly into this game to just the Steelers methodically move the ball down the field, score with some frequency, and just hold the Raiders down. I think the Raiders are just in a bad spot right now. They'll get healthy, they'll get good again, but I just don't think this is their week.
I think we're going to see Maxx Crosby do a number on Chukwuma Okorafor.
But then they don't have Yannick Ngakoue on the other side. I think that's where you focus your double teams. You line slide towards Maxx Crosby and just tell Okorafor to worry about his outside gap. You just slide the entire line that way. If he's cutting back in, you have Trey Turner there in support. There's things you can do because that Raiders D line is beat up. I think that's the game plan. Is you're just like, all right, let's focus our assets on this guy. That's what I do.
I think we can both agree then that to me the story of this game is seriously the interior of the line. If on offense we need to win the interior, on defense we got to win the interior. Where Derek Carr was able to do damage against the Ravens is when he was able to step up. If he can, they had that edge rush coming, but he was consistently able to step up in the pocket, and that's why they lost that game. If the Steelers are going to beat the Raiders and to neutralize Derek Carr, you have to have bodies there when he steps up in the pocket, like Josh Allen faced. That's how Cam Hayward got his sack. He had to step up in the pocket, and Cam Hayward's just waiting for him. Guys, the Steelers, if they can do that, they can win the interior of the line. I think we win this game easily.
Last question for you here tonight, Geoffrey. Who would you predict to be the Steelers player of the game? When all the dust is settled, who will be the best player after the Steelers play the Raiders?
I'm going with Naji Harris. I think
you said he wouldn't get 75 yards, but he would be the
rushing.
player of the game.
I didn't say he wouldn't get 75 yards rushing. I also said if Ben Roethlisberger can throw passes that actually hit him in the chest, he's going to tear it up, and I think he does. And I think fourth quarter, you see him break a low-scoring game and score a touchdown that gives the Steelers a win.
Of his career. Now, for me, I'm going to go with T.J. Watt. He had two sacks and a forced fumble. I think he is going to eat poor Alex Leatherwood's lunch. Like we talked about with Maxx Crosby, the difference here is the Steelers have a fantastic front seven. Probably the best in football. You cannot devote all your assets to T.J. Watt because if they do, then Melvin Ingram is going to have the 3 sacks that I'm kind of predicting here for T.J. Watt. I think this is going to be a crazy afternoon for one of the outside linebackers. Right now I'm saying it's T.J. Watt because they just simply can't force feed all the help to his side. I think T.J. Watt has one of these games where all of a sudden we're like, okay, 5 sacks in 2 games? Whoo! This boy came to play. That hold-in really didn't mean much of anything. But Geoffrey,
I think on defense you got to watch out for Cam Hayward.
Oh, absolutely.
I think when you see T.J. Watt going off, Derek Carr is going to be creeping up. He's going to be pushing up, and Cam Hayward, the way he played against Buffalo, if he does that if he does that against the Las Vegas Raiders, not the Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, we're going to see him with multiple sacks.
Yeah, you know what? Cam Hayward was an absolute freak. He was my player of the game last week. But outside of that, Geoffrey, Benedict, is there anything you want to plug for the people?
Yeah. Go
Vertex
to the
today.
Website. We did a Vertex on Cam Sutton this week, and I just did one on the Steelers pass rush where they blitzed twice in this game. It's the lowest blitz count I think since Keith Butler took over in 2015. I can't imagine there was anyone lower than 2 blitzes, and he did a great job. Dick LeBeau would be proud of the job he did with some of his creative blitzing. It's a great one to look at. Some of the stuff we did was just phenomenal.
Great stuff. Now, as we sign off here, I want to remind everyone to click over to behindthesteelcurtain.com. As we like to say, should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. The great Vertex articles that Geoffrey and Dave put together are just outstanding. You learn about football and you learn about the Pittsburgh Steelers through those, so make sure you're reading each and every one of those. Their commentary, tons of other film room breakdowns, lists, previews, you name it, it is there at behindthesteelcurtain.com. So make sure you're clicking over to that. And lastly, just make sure you are listening to the entire family podcast from Behind the Steel Curtain. 25 original titles. And that's typically we split a lot of our shows too. So that is more than 25 podcasts being uploaded each and every week for your listening pleasure. So make sure you are dialed in on that as well. If you love football, if you love the Pittsburgh Steelers, like we know most of you listening to this are, especially most of you that listen to an hour and 5 minutes of us two blabbering on about this team. So I know you love this team. So make sure you're following along, 5 stars, likes, whatever your podcast platform is that you listen to your podcast, just make sure you are dialed in there. So for my co-host, Geoffrey Benedict, my name is Michael Beck. Thank you for listening to Know Your Enemy. We will catch you guys next week. Go Steelers.